it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. And we have had an amazing kickoff in 2025 with such wonderful guests, such interesting conversations. And if you have not been listening in from the transition from the nonprofit series that ran from the end of the year to the beginning of this year, then you definitely want to be checking into today's show and today's guest. Sherry Finkel Murphy provides financial and longevity planning, education through storytelling, multi-courses, and personal Q&A via a subscription model. To me, when I speak to Sherry, she's all about women being able to take care of ourselves, have our choices. She's had a dynamic career. She has sold her financial planning practice at the end of 23, and she has been on the adventure and the joy of building a platform called Madrina Molly. Now, in this platform, we as women get to learn about taking care of ourselves, what choices we have, and the decisions we could make for our present life and, most importantly, our future. I could go on and on with like a long bio. Go look in the show notes. But Sherry, come join me on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, how did this start out? Where did this come from? Your story is great, and I love, like, you built a business and then you decided to do this. But so give us a little bit of that backstory.
So let's dig down on the word decide, because life comes at you fast. And
wow.
While everyone else in 2020 was in lockdown and making sourdough bread and learning how to crochet, all of my clients were keeping their appointments. So we were on Zoom and we were just full steam ahead. But I didn't get a chance to get up from my desk. And
by the way,
I
feel you, because I was on that same desk.
Yeah.
Leading businesses that were going through major transitions. It was a time of fear. And when we come down to fear, some of the biggest fears are about our finances and our financial future.
So my industry became very innovative. We went from paper very quickly to electronic signature documents, to other tools. I mean, you could see the wheels turning at an extraordinary speed to change the nature of financial advisory, financial planning. And FINRA, the SEC, gave us a long leash and said, so long as you are compliant, you can work from where you are. And then in the beginning of 2023, two things happened. One is my stepdaughter announced that she was pregnant with her second child in Ohio. And I turned to my husband and said, oh my goodness, we have to help, because they both work in that household. There's a precocious, at the time, a precocious 6-year-old, now a precocious 7-year-old. We have to help. It takes a village, right? At the same time, I have a 97-year-old mother in independent living by me in New York. There is nothing wrong with her except that she's 97.
97.
She's 97. So, things are creaky.
And I have to say, I feel you. I get you. I've been there. And God bless your mom, who is independent, but a body in their 90s doesn't somehow do what our body did in our 40s, let alone 50s or 60s.
It does not. It does not. And God bless her, she's 110% there mentally, which is just crazy. Wow. Just crazy.
Blessing.
Because yes, many blessings. And this informs my practice because, well, I want to get there too. I mean, I want to be as sharp as her at 97, and the genes and the lifestyle say I may get there, which informs everything. So long story longer, apologies for that. I called an audible. FINRA announces you are back in the office 51% of the time, just as the Hubs and I sell the big house and rent a townhouse in Saratoga Springs and a townhouse in Ohio. And
you
left.
Make the change of life decision. You make that next step decision. And then another decision comes in that has you like, oh, what happens now?
Right, right. So I always say I called an audible. I called an audible, had spent the year transitioning my wonderful clients to others in the practice. And December 31st, I announced that I was flexible. So we are practicing in my household radical flexibility. My husband does have his own business, so and he's former Army. So as far as mobile command
Radical
centers,
flexibility, I'm sure works really well for him.
yeah, it works well for him. He can operate out of the front of an F-150. But for me, it requires an office in both locations, and I am virtual, and that's fine. And when I am in Ohio, I am a grandma and a stepmom, and when I am in New York, I am a daughter. And I like to say that I have a spare walker in the boot and a spare child seat in the back of the same SUV. And of course, when I deliver this spiel, everybody says, "Me too."
Complete disclosure, and the listeners of her success story, kind of, if you follow me and you know my journey, I lost my mom last year, and I'm just finished cleaning out the walker and the everything else. And I have a granddaughter, and it's what do we have here, and it's this just transitional world. And, that goes back to understanding what our choices are as well as present living. So that was a bit of my journey last year, and I've learned so much of the idea of being present for my business, being present for my mom in the last many years of her journey, and being present as a mom and a grandmother.
Absolutely. And that's something that we are not acknowledging. So I want to acknowledge it right now. This is the first time in history that 4 and 5 generations are living contemporaneously. And how wonderful and how different from a developmental standpoint, how different is it to know your grandparents into adulthood? And to receive their wisdom without the stress of being the direct parent. We all know this. I'm not telling anybody, anything they don't
That
know.
generation of that additional generation as that buffer is a huge, and that is a buffer actually as we're the parents, but the grandparents. I mean, I'm getting calls now like when Grandma cooked this with us. Like what it? I was like, okay, she didn't put the degrees on the recipe, but it's this. Oh yeah, okay, gotta go. We're making her bread.
So yes, just all of the above, all of the above. And I think that, a lot of people spend a lot of time talking about corporate ageism and the challenges with that. But I'm seeing something different. And that's I am seeing later millennials and Gen Zers. They think their grandparents are cool and their grandparents are cool.
And they
Uh,
are. Exactly. They really are.
So there's a generation, and I'm resisting. I think if there's a message, it's sort of resist is the word parochial or provincial? One or the others, narrow structured. Resist the narrow structured view that says you grow up and get educated, you work for 40 years, you retire for 30 years. And you resist that for a couple of reasons. One is we are far more codependent than we acknowledge. My parents were in a position to retire to Florida for 30 years, but I think their grandchildren would have benefited from having them a little closer rather than this sort of swoop in and swoop out relationship.
Moment.
But how wonderful to know them into adulthood. I don't think we have that luxury. I don't think we have that luxury of saying, okay, now go live the next piece of your life in this retirement community. I don't think it works like that anymore. And certainly the late stage boomers, I call it Boom X, we don't want to retire like that. Yeah, a few of us want to go to Margaritaville, but
So talk to me about Boom X. Okay, I love how you call it Boom X. I'm like, okay, because you said that I was like, my Boom X. Where do I fit?
so I mean, Boom X spans the later boomers, the boomers, the later boomers who went to work in the late 70s, early 80s, who joined this new world of women in Peter Pan collars and floppy bow ties, and all the way to Gen X. all the way to Gen X, maybe even elder millennials. So it's a pretty big cohort of women. And we still are a little stigmatized by lack of financial education and maybe some older expectations for how our lives would flow. And my message is, do not think in terms of these three structured areas. In order for you to live to 100, and oh, by the way, you're living longer than you expect you're living, you are going to
Hello.
need.
I mean, we are living
Yeah.
longer, and I think it's our responsibility to do that as healthy as we can to enjoy the living longer.
Well said. Well said. Go, and I think that's the whole message is if you approach 50 as if you are a deteriorating asset, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, I'm a hot mess.
Tuesday.
No sense.
Tuesday.
Yeah. No sense in fixing my financials. No sense in fixing my health. No sense in fixing my skills. Wait a second. Just hold on a second. You have a lot more runway than you think. And I tell people to think thanatologically. So thanatological age is the number of actuarial years you have left versus your chronological age. And if you're 50 and you're healthy, you are going to live now in the US another 30 plus years. And if you are healthy to 65, you get 5 added onto that. So now we're living 35 more years into your late 80s. Well, I don't know about you, but where were you 35 years ago? I know I have
Oh my
accomplished a
God, it
lot.
was a different life 35 years ago.
Right?
It was a
Right.
different life. And when I think about you and I, your mom is still here and she's in her upper 90s. My mom died in her lower 90s. And physically, she was no heart, no cholesterol, no blood pressure, no diabetes. She was a healthy woman.
Yeah. I mean, the body's going to go as long as the body is going to go. But there's no excuse for not investing in ourselves because let us assume that the last 10 years of life is technically old age. That's rocking chair age, whatever
Okay.
whatever that means. So now we have 25 years to do something with. Well, for goodness sakes, develop the skills that are going to enable you to communicate with your grandchildren, to communicate with your bank, to communicate with your health care provider. You have plenty of market doublings to go. So even if you are underfunded, I spend a lot of time thinking about how to live life and feel like you've had a successful financial plan. And of course, get your numbers right. The 50s are the time when we feel like we're under a tremendous amount of stress that's kind of hormonally dangerous when we're going through menopause. And no time like the present to fix the cardio profile, to fix the glucose metabolism. We're finding out that all of these things can be improved. And that's exciting. That's exciting. So back to my point is you can't wait until you're 65 or 67 or 70 to plan for what you're going to do after work. It starts at 50.
We have talked about previously, and I love your concept of don't save for a year. And you have a great way of putting it. So, in my perspective of don't wait to live, that I put it as don't wait to live. You can't have everything, but don't wait to live. You put it in another way in the same concept that is so beautiful. Will you share a little bit? Because I know I'm not getting it right.
You are getting it perfectly. The don't wait to live is the message. But I call it the year of not saving because that's just catchy. And it was, I want to hear about the year of not saving. And it has to do with some simple math. I don't like to overcomplicate things. A lot of clients would come to me and say, I don't do math. It's like, of course you do math. Don't be silly. You get more bang for your buck out of leaving your portfolio, whatever size it is, in the market longer to compound and grow. That is a known fact. So if your money doubles every 10 years, broad brush generalization, it's fine. If your money doubles every 10 years and you are a good saver, and let's say you have $1 million in your 401k when you're 55, by the time you're 65 and thinking about retirement, you're going to have $2 million in that portfolio. Yay, you. If you intended to put $20,000 into your 401k at 55 so that you could take a big vacation when you retire, that $20,000, let's say there's a corporate match, so let's make it $30,000, is going to be $60,000 at 65. But here's the catch. Now, this goes back to that 4 generations. By the time you're 66 and you say, I'm retiring, I want to take a 30-day tour of Europe, now you have a frail parent still living in their own home, and you may not feel as comfortable about getting out of Dodge for a month and gallivanting halfway around the universe. Your children may be on to their children, which means that whether it is advice or assistance, you are an active parent again once the grandparenting starts. So my message is, in a 100-year life, do the thing in your 50s. So what it looks like is this. I'm exchanging a year of saving for one more year of work, or at least one more year of not spending down. If I give my portfolio one more year of growth, I now have $2,200,000 because I am 1/10 of the way to the next doubling. If I saved at 55 and I retired at 65, I would have $2,060,000. So I have more money if I don't save, but wait a year. And I'm not going to go into any more math than that, make it any more complicated. For some people, they need to save. They're very underfunded. But for the rules followers, the people who've done everything right, who are a little bit tired and who are trying to get over the hump for that last 10 or so years, planning a big vacation or a sabbatical at 56, it can be very exciting and very rewarding and very energizing. And I'm all about the energizing. So that's the year of not saving concept. What's interesting is that the younger generation are all about, oh yeah, we're going to work 3 years and take a sabbatical. We're going to work another 3 years and take a sabbatical. Like, they get it. They know they're going to be in the workforce for 60 years. And so they are taking time to live life. And I'm teaching our cohort to do the same.
So let's talk about that. Tell me a little bit about Madrina Molly and how this came about, where this is. I know you're in this build, and it's such a joy to actually have you on her success story now, to like be in the trenches a little bit with you.
Yeah. So I'm building something. Who knows where it will go? I'm on a mission.
I appreciate that, because I honest to goodness said this yesterday, and I can't make this stuff up, but I said this yesterday. I said it to a client. I said, listen, we build a vision, and then you start taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to know the vision is going to look a little different when you get there, because as the actions are going to feed in information, but
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean you don't build the vision and you don't take the action. And my biggest encouragement to this client was, and then enjoy the journey to get there.
I think enjoying the journey to get there, because the journey never ends. I think it's always a mistake to be too goal-oriented, that we don't fall in love with the process. If you fall in love with whatever process you wake up to every day, you're going to be successful, whatever that is, even if the goalposts move. So Madrina Molly fills a market need. Real quick, 16% of the cohort has financial education. That's it. Women come to me with shame. They come to me, boxes of tissues abound. They come to me with, I don't know what I'm doing. You're going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong. Tears, just crazy stuff. And I recognize it. And these are smart women. These are high cash flow women. And there's no excuse for that. Who made you feel wrong? So one thing I want to say is that we have a bit of a challenge in the industry. I'm not talking about the CFP profession, because we are fiduciaries, but the investment advisory industry is that our go-to-market is, I can do it better than you. You're doing it wrong. I can do it better. And I resent that. I resent that as a sales tactic. But I digress. There are at this point, about 25,000 women certified financial planner practitioners. Most of those are young. We can only mint them as fast as they can take the test. And there aren't enough fiduciary advisors for our cohort. We are the peak 65 people, over 10,000 a day, turning 65. Plenty in the Gen X cohort behind in their 50s. And they want to speak to someone who has the same lived experience. I am a corporate refugee as well. This financial planning was a second career for me, depending upon how you count it. It could have been a third. But this was me recredentialing in my early 50s and changing course because I have experienced exactly what my clients were experiencing with these rolling layoffs in corporate America and the profound lack of loyalty of employers for their intellectual property, for their talent over 50. And so part of the conversation is, you may not make it to retirement at this company. We need to, starting at 50, plan for the next thing. So there's a lot there, but let me simplify it by saying that if you are a financial advisor, you are building a practice. If you're fee-based or you're asset-based, your job is to find the best clients and fill your 168 hours a week with your ideal clients. And that's really hard. Women don't want to turn away other women. What about women who want information but don't own the financial advisory relationship? What about women who have lots of money but it's locked up in a corporate 401k? What about women who don't meet the requirement, whatever that means? I mean, we're going to say you don't make enough money for me to give you good advice. So this subscription model is intended to be democratizing and disruptive. Essentially, I will treat you like a client and answer your personal financial planning and longevity planning questions in my CFP capacity for a very small, relative to fee-based planners, for a very small subscription broadened over many people so that my 168 hours is protected as well. I guess that's about it. The idea is that people get the right to ask information they wouldn't necessarily have access to otherwise. And I'm going to say something impolitic because part of my research for my manuscript has been reading what is out there in the way of retirement planning books.
Okay.
And there are some extremely well-known talking heads who give patently bad advice, just bad or wrong advice. And I can't bear that. I can't bear that because I have nothing to gain and I have no products to sell. And I think that frees me up to deliver financial planning best practice.
And that makes sense. I have to ask you before we wrap up, I have two questions I want to cover. What has surprised you in this journey, in your career, in your transition from your financial planning to building Madrina Molly, and this in your life transition?
I think that I get tremendous joy from learning. I had always promised myself that I would go back to school, and I never did. I have a master's, but it was in my 20s. And I never did until I started certifying for the Certified Financial Planner, Retirement Income Professional. What joy. What joy to be learning. Just completed the FPA's Elder Planning Specialist. So I'm enjoying lifelong learning and cannot get enough of it. I know there are a lot, I'm not alone, that studenting is something that I do well. So there's some real joy in that. And I think that I am delighting in having my schedule my own. That's probably the biggest win, is that I don't know that I'm doing significantly different work, but I no longer have to abide by an 8 a.m. meeting, a 10 a.m. meeting, etc. And so those are two big things that this change represents. And I would encourage people to re-articulate their next act so that they own their 168 hours a week.
I was just going to say, what piece of advice would you pass forward? And I think that one is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Own this time. Make the decisions. Be present and live.
Yes. I think that there isn't anybody I work with who is afraid of hard work, and many people are driven by the notion of work, but we want to work in accordance with our values. That makes
And
it
that's
easy.
where I look at working smart. Everything I do is at this point in my life is aligned with my values.
Mhm.
Even in bringing on a new client, before we even cross the line of saying we're working together, I do several phone calls to make sure our values are aligned, that we're in sync, that we're going to be working well together. Because I am not going to compromise at this point in my life
And I
on myself, my values, and living my way.
And so that's what happens. So think about this cohort as they develop the gravitas of entering the fifth decade is when they have less tolerance for people and systems that don't share their values. And so that push and pull that you feel is not, I hate work. It's, I want to do something meaningful. I want to explore generativity, middle essence, if you will. So, yes.
So, Sherry Finkel Murphy, thank you so much for joining me today on Her Success Story. I have to say, every time we chat, I have to remember to stay on schedule. Like, oh, we're live. We're live. We're recording. This is a podcast interview. This isn't just you and I having a conversation. I love what you're doing for women leaders, for women who are in their second 50, to know we have control. We are the masters of our destiny, and we can create what we want.
Thank you so much for having me. You are delightful company.
And listeners, what I say always at this point in the show is take a deep breath. I'll do it with you because it feels so good. And think about the conversation that Sherry and I had today. What was the piece that resonated with you? What was your one takeaway, that one aha? Think about it, and I'll encourage you to write it down. It doesn't matter if you jot it in your phone as a note, if you put it on your desk, it's with a Post-it, I don't care where, but write it down and then make that decision. What are you going to do with that piece of information? What are you going to do with that takeaway and aha? That is the gift to yourself. Thank you again for joining me on Her Success Story. I look forward to bringing you many more fabulous guests in 2025 like Sherry was today, and we will see you next time.